Welcome to our market update podcast, which we do every Friday at the moment. Today is Friday, the 10th of April. I'm Rob B with Rob D. And Rob, I'm going to ask you what's becoming our traditional question. The sun is shining. It's a glorious day. We've got a Prime Minister in intensive care. What the hell's going on? How are you feeling about it?
Well, I have no idea what's going on. How am I feeling? I knew you were going to ask this. I feel okay. I don't feel excited or massively positive, and I don't feel like the world's about to end. I'm kind of just okay with everything, and I think that's okay. Feeling okay. What about you?
I think that's okay. And yeah, same really. We touched on it last week, but it's always hard to reconcile all the different things that are going on, in that there's sort of a lot of doom and gloom, but we were expecting this level of doom and gloom, and it's in some ways less gloomy than expected. And so should you be feeling good about that because it's better than it could have been, or bad about that because you're hearing about hundreds of people dying every day? It's all very weird. And I think feeling kind of neutral is probably the only way there is to feel at the moment. And that's what we seem to be seeing in the property market at the moment, Rob, because it's kind of been a quiet week for property as well.
It's been really quiet, which I think is a good thing. You know, no one's being panicky around property. When you look at property prices online, which obviously we do every single day because it's kind of our job, no one's panicking. There aren't like people slashing prices here, there and everywhere. Of course, if you push for it, and we've talked about this, there's a possibility to do deals for people who really do need to sell right now. But there's not mass panic. The whole market isn't collapsing. The whole market isn't going, what's going to happen? So it seems like it's been a very quiet week generally for property. But again, I think that's okay, Rob.
Yeah, and I've got my Rightmove alerts set up for different areas as I do. And there's really not been much in the way of price reductions. Barely anything, actually. Everyone seems to be taking this view that, all right, it's a pause. The market will just restart at some point back where it was. And who knows whether that will turn out to be the case or not. But at the moment, the panic certainly isn't there. And there's actually new stock coming to market as well, which has really surprised me as well. I suspect some of that might be transactions that have fallen through coming back on. But there has actually been some brand new stock listed, which I found surprising because that's not going to go anywhere for a while, surely.
No. And another part of property that you wouldn't expect to go anywhere right now is property being let for understandable reasons. You can't, do viewings and you can't show people around, and it's pretty tough to move people in. But because of that, there is a bit of movement there. So where general property prices haven't been moving, something that we have witnessed this week is some areas that rents are being slashed just to get anybody in. And I think that's sensible. I don't think it means that when the market comes back, that's the rental level. Far from it. I think because there's just so few people now looking to let properties, that landlords are going, right, you know what? I'd rather have some money in than no money in. And that does make sense. As long as it's a good quality tenant, having some income is better than no income. So landlords are, for a temporary measure anyway, slashing their rents. And we're not just seeing this with the letting agent that we have. I'm seeing this across the board on Rightmove and Zoopla. It's really interesting. I don't think it's a shock, but even though it's the right thing to do, it's still really interesting to see it happening and those properties being advertised for way under what they should be. I mean, if you're listening to this as a potential tenant right now, then wow, take your pick. You're going to get a great deal.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a tenant, and it's a rational thing to do for landlords. Of course, it's like you say, Rob, it's surprising though to see it happening to such an extent. But it is a win-win if you can go in for 6 months and get some income as a landlord and get a great deal on somewhere you otherwise maybe would have had to stretch yourself for as a tenant. Then fantastic.
Now, Rob, we've been both doing a lot of reading, understandably, over the last few weeks, of trying to make sense of what's happening. We obviously have our own views, but I think it's very arrogant to go, all my views are enough, and the best thing to do is just absorb and learn as much as possible. And that's what we've been doing. And I think in next week's market update, we'll give you our thoughts of where the market might potentially go. I want to do a bit more reading. I'm not quite ready to go public on where the future lies. And of course, I could be very wrong in a week's time as well. But something I found really interesting during this process and reading up on things is gold. Now, when this crisis kicked off, I made a trade in the markets, just a small trade, more out of interest, to say that gold would rise. And it did for a few days go up because people panic and gold increases. But actually what happened is gold fell. And I was really shocked by that because my beliefs around gold where when times are difficult and scary, that gold goes up in value. So this then prompted me to do a bit of a deep dive. And here's why looking back at history is so important, because it can tell you why things have happened. It turns out that in a crisis, in a big crisis, assets are sold and lots of people panic and they take cash, including gold. And it happens for a short window. And this is what happened in '08. In '08, gold was on the rise up till '08. The '08 crash panic happened. And then there was a brief dip where people went, no, I want money. I want to hold money. Instead of not even gold. And then it stabilized, and then gold went on another surge. And that's what seems to be happening with gold now, is that it was rising. It's had a dip where people have panicked, but now it's back on the up again. And it's just a pattern that's happened time and time again. And that's why, Rob, I think it's so interesting. You don't have to be original with your thoughts on these things. You know, so many wise people talk about this, but they say just look at history because it constantly repeats itself.
Yeah, and that's probably why some of the people who are the most interesting to listen to at this time are people like Ray Dalio, like Howard Marks, like Warren Buffett, who are all, for all the many wonderful things about them, not young. They've been around a while. So why are they worth listening to now? Well, clearly they've made lots of money. And yes, they've made lots of money as a partly because they've been around for such a long time and had time to make mistakes and recover from them and all the rest of it. But also because they've seen it all before, or if not exactly the same thing, they've seen patterns. So I think we're both trying to speed up our own learning by getting their insights, and so we don't have to learn all the lessons ourselves, and that's a really valuable thing to do. But to an extent, I think you always have to experience the lessons and see it for yourself in real time and be involved a little bit like you have been with gold to really ram those lessons home. But all of those lessons are things that we can learn next time round, and it's something that we've said loads of times before, but it's so much of this is about your attitude. You could be panicking right now, or you could be seeing it as an opportunity to learn and know more in future.
So we will dig into that in more detail next week. We'll give you our thoughts and opinions for what they're worth, and you can decide whether you want to listen to us or not, but we will get into that. We're going to do a bit more reading, a bit more research, give ourselves time to think, because you know what, a lot of people are quite quick to throw out reactions and opinions in this world, in this market. And I think actually there's a lot to be said, just pausing and just thinking about your actions and your thoughts and what you're going to do. We've been updating you on all things business on the market updates as well. And just a brief update on this. Following on from last week, we talked about how we've put 20% of our team through the furlough process, and we've topped their wages up to 100%, which we're really pleased that we were able to do. Although it seems that some people aren't quite happy with that. So I'll read you a review we've had on iTunes, and it says, appreciate the transparency, but just because you can doesn't mean you should use taxpayers' money to support a successful business. Generally an excellent podcast. Well, thank you about the podcast point. But I think it's worth addressing, Rob, because other people may have come to the same assumptions. And it's important to say that decisions like that are far from made lightly. We haven't just thought, oh, bit of a cash boost, let's do that. Going through that process was not an easy decision. But here's the thing. If we waited for this crisis to play out and got to a point where we're near the end and gone, oh, wow, we're now in a lot of trouble, and then decided to furlough, well, then it's too late. What's the point? Your business is almost certainly going to go under. So it'd almost be irresponsible not to do it. Ultimately, right now, our costs as a business are more than our income, which is not unique. That's the same for many, many businesses. And you know what? That's okay. We understand that and we're planning. So by taking actions like that means that we put the business in a stronger place. So we have a good chance of coming through this, a really good chance. Rob and I have stopped paying ourselves. Now, can the business pay us right now today? Yes. But if we carry on paying ourselves for the next few months, and then we get to that point in time and go, oh, right, now we're in trouble, then again, that was reckless and irresponsible as business owners. This isn't just about Rob and I. This is about the 50 plus people we employ who are really important to us, and their livelihoods are really important to us, and that's what keeps us awake at night. And also, you as a community. If we mess this up as a business and then go away, then think of all the value that will be missed in the future. So it's so important that as business owners, you take these tough decisions and you go, okay, you know what? Here is the environment we're in. What are the best decisions we can make now rather than panic decisions later on? And that's why we've done it. So hopefully that helps you understand the decision. But what I would say is that it probably would have been better to ask the question, and we have a service called Ask Rob and Rob, where you could have asked why we've done it, rather than assume why we've done it. Because being a know-it-all or a learn-it-all, I know which one I'd rather be. Be curious.
Yeah, I think understanding the reason why people have done something is really important, and it's not always obvious. There might be an answer that seems obvious. Oh, they've done this for this reason, but you don't actually know, and you can't know unless you ask. And what the furlough scheme has allowed us to do is to give our team some kind of certainty. So because that exists and because we've acted early, it means that no one's losing out. Everyone's getting paid exactly what they were before, and everyone, by our best estimates of what this is going to be and how long it might go on for, making pretty negative assumptions, is going to have a job at the end of it. And that is so much better than just barreling on and then getting to the end and go, oops, we were too optimistic. That didn't end well. That's a disaster for everyone. And broadly, I think the furlough scheme by the government is the right thing to do. And this whole situation is so unique because normally this is the kind of thing that I'm intrinsically against. I'm not for governments propping up businesses, but because of the cause and the duration and everything else, it feels like the right thing to do. And lots of commentators have said the same thing. Normally, I'd be against this. In this instance, it is right. And there are lots of interesting points around like corporate morals at times like this, if such a thing exists, because there's been a lot in the press about businesses who've spent the last decade, when times have been good, borrowing loads of money to buy back their own stock and pump up their share price, not using any money to put aside for a rainy day. And so lo and behold, as soon as this happens, they're coming to the government asking for bailouts. Morally dubious? Yes, I'd say so. But the ability for businesses who haven't done that, who are being prudent but are not able to weather months of their income going away, which is a situation I don't think many businesses have planned for, having an ability for them to be supported through it makes sense to me. And it seems like the right thing to do, the right thing for the taxpayer and for the economy, because everything gets better so much faster and people can start creating value and paying taxes again if they've got jobs to go back to.
What is really pleasing though is that people are taking an interest in this side of our world and business in general, and because we're on the front line, hopefully we can give interesting insights there as well. So we'll open this up. If you want to know more, then please do be curious. Please use Ask Rob and Rob and say, guys, I've got a business question for you. So, because it's a property business, so I'm sure lots of people will still enjoy the answers and the insights that we can give. And in this current climate, it is really interesting what's happening, and we are making challenging decisions and still trying to be optimistic for the future. And that balancing act is really, really interesting. And don't get me wrong, some days are tougher than others, but some days are really rewarding. So if you'd like to know more, go to Ask Rob and Rob, ask us some questions, and we will give you some answers. And that's the next time we'll be back, Rob, is with Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday. And we've got the podcast on Thursday. And you know what? We kind of said we'll be back next Friday with a market update. So until then, take care, everyone. Enjoy your Easter break. Hope it goes well for you. Bye-bye.